money, religion, and words, man. We made them up!
Luminous Arc 3 is Image Epic's 7th game, directed by Hideyuki Shirakawa. We're at the end of Image Epic's time with the Nintendo DS and Nintendo Wii. Within 5 years, Image Epic went from a support studio to the focus of a Pixiv campaign to hiring the very same people that Mikage worked under. Image Epic's influence brought in developers from yesteryear to rising stars in the industry. Mikage even spoke at the Computer Entertainment Developers Conference, and during development of Arc Rise Fantasia, held a presentation at his alma mater. Journalists even likened Mikage as the new Satoru Iwata. And that's where we are with Luminous Arc 3. Arc 3 is right where Image Epic can see the financial success of 7th Dragon, but right before the reality of Arc Rise Fantasia. While 7th Dragon was the first game to stay within the Japanese market, Luminous Arc 3 is the point where fewer Image Epic games receive localization. And despite the problems with Arc Rise in general, Image Epic seemed to be unaffected, or even aware of them. In 2009, Image Epic announced that they'd be working on games for the PSP. And in 2010, they opened a position for a PlayStation 3 developer, and later announced plans that they'd be self-publishing their work. But internally, Image Epic is falling apart. Image Epic's collapse doesn't begin with an earthquake shaking the foundation of their company. Image Epic's collapse is a pattern of mismanagement, which starts as early as Sands of Destruction. It continues with Arc Rise Fantasia, their own Tales of Symphonia, Dawn of the New World. It mutates into distrust between Mikage and his own staff, and how Mikage says one thing to shareholders, but the opposite is true. And this collapse crystallizes with Luminous Arc 3, a game that demands you look past the first impression, but completely falls apart under scrutiny. Like 7th Dragon, Luminous Arc 3 is fan-translated, but Luminous Arc 3 is machine-translated. And whether you like it or not, between 7th Dragon and Luminous Arc 3 are 7 years of socio-political discourse where localization is so thoroughly examined that you need to be JLPT N1, BJT J1+, ISO 19100 certified to audit for ISO 17100 and ISO 18587 compliance, and of course, claim sovereignty of Japan as a permanent resident, to even have a say in this conversation. Throughout this series, I've been poking at localization. Most of the time, I criticize them. But recently, I've softened my stance to better understand them. The fan translation of Luminous Arc 3 is a story in of itself, so I reached out to SesherCat, the machine operator of the fan translation. Sources are linked in the description, as well as my talk with SesherCat, who I'm going to nickname Cat. There was drama surrounding the fan translation, but that's not the point. The issues behind Arc 3's fan translation are more technical and less interpersonal, and at the request of Cat, parts of my conversation with them have been redacted. Just like with Arc Rise Fantasia, I'm going to present this with as much as my personal bias removed as possible. Let's start with getting a sense of scale. In English, we use word count to measure the length of a story, but in Japanese, and with visual novels especially, they tend to use the file size of the script. Arc 3's Japanese script has a file size of 1.3 megabytes. The fan translation in English is about 190,000 words long. Things like flavor text for items, different dialogue branches, and different endings are included in this estimation. The only thing this estimation removes are the names of the characters speaking. In English, Arc 3's script is about the same length as Dune by Frank Herbert, and The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. In Japanese, Arc 3's script is about the same size as Air. Haruki no Saidai no Teki wa Risei is 1.8 megabytes large, Mizutani claimed that Arc 3's script was twice as large as Arc 2. It's important to know how much text is in Arc 3, because on top of translation, there is the issue of injecting English text back into the ROM. The first translation effort was headed by Yukiwa-kun in 2011 in a Luminous Arc forum hosted by Invasion Free. In 2012, YouTube user Beta Gamma Omega posted videos of the translation effort. A progress update was uploaded to Pastebin on April 2013. In May 2016, GBA temp user The Minecrafter started a thread for a new translation project. Sesher Cat, known as Luminous Cat, joined in March 2019 and supported the effort by uploading YouTube videos with English subtitles that were machine translated. Cat's videos are like Lanian's translation of Tales of Rebirth, or English Sub for All's translation of Last Ranker. Meanwhile, Minecrafter was still waiting for translators. Calling English letters in place of Japanese results in large gaps between every English letter. Yukiwa's way around it was to redraw the fonts and use character pairs. This may also explain why the English letters in Beta's videos look weird. But the issue in drawing character pairs is making every permutation possible, which is over 3,000 unique character pairs. In July 2020, Plasterion created a tool that not only created these character pairs, but also created a tool to inject these shortened English letters into the ROM. From there, Cat's YouTube project outpaced Minecrafter's efforts to even find a translator. And Minecrafter handed off the project to Cat in May 2021. And with the help from graphics editors Haumander and Asakura, Luminous Arc 3 was fully translated on Christmas Eve 2021. The fan translation of Luminous Arc 3 might sound like a Christmas miracle 10 years in the making, but it's not the only fan translation to turn heads at the time. Within that year, we had a retranslation of Bahamut Lagoon, Racing Lagoon, and of course, Fate Extra Perfect. Not only are these games recognized as hidden gems, but their translation teams had both Japanese speakers and native English speakers, something that Luminous Arc 3's fan translation team lacked. And Racing Lagoon got so much attention that mainstream news outlets wrote articles about it. As a result of machine translation, Luminous Arc 3 is very rough. You can tell when a machine is doing their thing, and you can tell when a human is punching up the script. We'll talk about this later, but keep this in mind. We can debate for hours over pulp culture references versus a stiff but accurate script. But they don't explain a broken battle system or why there was a 6-month production delay for just the story in Japanese on a development cycle that lasted for 3 years. Luminous Arc 3 was released in Japan on December 10th, 2009. If Atlas localized Arc 3 in 6 months like its predecessors, Arc 3 would release around June 2010. But that lines up with... Weirdly enough, the original Persona 3 released on the same day as Luminous Arc 1 in America. Other localization companies were busy as well. But consider the past Image Epic games that received localization. Sands of Destruction bragged about their connection to Chrono Trigger developers, but failed to compete against a port of Chrono Trigger. And look at Arc-Rise Fantasia realistically. Positive reviews of Arc-Rise beg you to ignore a list of deal breakers. The next game to make it to America would be Fate Extra. And the game after that would be Black Rock Shooter the game. Not Last Ranker, not Saigo no Yakusoku no Monogatari. Blame whatever or whoever you want, but the message is clear. A Luminous Arc 3 localization was not economically viable in America. And remember, Luminous Arc 1 was so hyped up that Nintendo Power released a 3-page interview with Mikage. Luminous Arc 3 is a return to form. We get an anime opening, one that we haven't had since Sands of Destruction. And if 3D doesn't count, since Luminous Arc 2. The animation studio is Studio Dean. Kaitoshi Bano returns as the character designer. Procyon Studio returns for music, in particular Sunsuke Tsuchiya and Maki Kirioka as composers, with Yasunori Mitsuda as a sound producer. The voice actors for Arc 3 are once again A-listers, and I'll let their performances speak for themselves throughout the review. And on the subject of credits, I hate how they're formatted. I cannot read the kanji. And this was a problem I had in Luminous Arc 2. And this is not a problem with every other Image Epic game so far. So if anyone does know the credits to Luminous Arc 3, please let me know. Upon starting Arc 3, you can select the difficulty. We'll talk about this later, but I will say this now. The only difference between normal and hard are enemy stats. There is no consequence if you play on normal, nor are there any benefits if you play on hard. Once you select a difficulty, you cannot change it, even on New Game Plus. So for this review, all gameplay is on normal, unless noted otherwise. You do not need to play neither Luminous Arc 1 nor 2 to understand 3. The Arc series is connected by similar narrative devices, and the most you'd miss out on are references. But because of the nature of this review series, I'm going to assume you've played Luminous Arc 1 and 2. Even if I think my older reviews are weak by my current standards, I'm still going to rely on them as a point of reference. And at the very least, I can try to win over your trust and show some improvement. The battle system in Arc 3 is mostly the same from Arc 2. Party members have very specific niches, as every character only learns 5 skills. The action order, or AO, dictates turn order. It's now easier to temporarily alter AO in battle, but permanent AO boosts are still rare. The flash gauge is the same since Arc 2. The flash gauge can power up items and skills, and of course use flash drives, which still work like limit breaks. And the more of your flash gauge you use at once, the stronger and flashier your skills. The top screen is now dedicated to the turn order. You can see the names of every character, and when you target them, their names also get highlighted. The level up system is the biggest change in Arc 3. Instead of fixed stat increases, you have the option between 2 choices, balanced or unique. The stat bonuses vary between levels, but in general, balanced is better for defense, while unique is better for offense. You cannot reset your build, even on New Game Plus, so choose wisely. The PCA slots are the same since Arc 2. They're passive boosts that affect anything from stats to experience gains. Arc 3 also brings back crafting, but is more similar to 7th Dragon than Luminous Arc 1. Enemies drop crafting items that you can exchange to unlock weapons, but you can even train weapons by using them in battle to unlock new ones. And armor are linear upgrades that show up at fixed points in the story. Again, elemental attributes are once again completely overhauled in Arc 3, and the weakness system is once again as complex as Arc 1. Along with elemental attributes, the position and the height relative to your target affect how much damage you deal, and the game tells you by how much. As a result, planning is a lot more important. You can now change equipment while you deploy your team, check your enemy's elemental distribution, and even get hints on how to approach every fight when you survey the map. The character archetypes in Arc 3 are a mix of the familiar and the new. The main character, Refi, is basically Leon, and can usually one-shot enemies with their greatsword. Ilulu, the main healer, is exactly like Mel, who is exactly like Luna, who is a water elemental healer with some damage-dealing spells. For new archetypes, we'll start with Ashley. She's fast, has a great physical attack and defense, and can target multiple enemies. But Ashley has a low move stat and an even lower magical defense. Dino, on the other hand, is a mid-ranged physical attacker with very specific attack ranges, and Heine can spend MP to do that one defend option in Final Fantasy Tactics. Downtime between every story battle has been completely overhauled. Arc 3 has a hub level. It's like the Overlord's castle in Disgaea. You can run freely around the school, so you can shop, craft, do side missions, and of course, perform intermissions. Intermissions are like Arc 2. You can't max out every character's relationship in one playthrough. But Arc 3 is much more forgiving if you mess up. You can buy an apology gift to mend the relationship. But this gift only works once. In other words, you can buy your way into someone's heart, but not buy real estate in someone's heart. Or you can just save scum. And this time around, even NPCs have intermissions. But if being social isn't your thing, you can leave humanity behind and spend your time at the gym for permanent stat boosts. Or waste time peeping on girls. You can only perform as many intermissions as you have hourglasses. Some intermissions might cost more hourglasses, but you can cheat the system. Even if you only have 1 hourglass left, you can still take intermissions that cost 2 or even 3 hourglasses. But side missions don't waste your time, so you can level grind as much as you want. And that's where the problems begin. Because on the surface, Luminous Arc 3 is a significant improvement from Luminous Arc 1 and 2, but it's really more of the same. I know you can't wait for your 10-year reunion, when you're gonna bust down the double doors, and when you stand on the tables before them, they will know what all this time was for. But I haven't explained how Arc 3 works in practice. Before we continue, we need to talk about the story. Spoilers for everything on the screen. Remember, every Image Epic game I've already reviewed will be spoiled. And while I'm here, I'm going to diverge from the fan translation's naming conventions. All my sources for Luminous Arc 3 never use Romaji for names, which causes a lot of confusion for the English speaker. Most notably, I'm going to pronounce Eruru as Elulu and Refi as Refi. If you only care about gameplay, skip here. If not, shove your Shokupan in your mouth and start running, because you're late for school. The game starts with Refi and Lily spilling their guts. Refi metaphorically and Lily literally. Monsters called Felicia are harvesting eyes for the organ trade. Eyes are a metaphor for potential, as in having an eye for creativity. But eyes are also literal. An eye can transform into a lapis, a gemstone-like carbuncle. If you pull that off, you will die, like Lily. If not, it would be extremely painful. But Refi's a big guy. For you, having a pair of lapises like Refi is really fucking weird.
Boy next door.
Refi picks a fight with Glenn, Refi's best friend since they were orphans. Their teacher, Valerie, who is also Refi's guardian, rewards Refi by recruiting him into Magus, a team of teenagers with attitude that fight Felicia. Refi also earns a 6-star rank, the highest rank in school, on his first day while he ignores school rules. For comparison, Elulu, a fellow Magi, had to study for 2 years to fairly go from rank 3 to rank 4. There is a 7th rank, but it's reserved for Enogia, who fought alongside the school's founder. Elulu is a lot like Lily, except Elulu has blue hair, is a mage, and not murdered.
それともう一つ、外見で人の優劣を語る者、鉄拳に服すべし。
こいつ、上等じゃないか。なら、実力で判断させてもらう。
After touching Ashley's boobs, we have a duel and recruit Ashley into Magus. Okay, wait. Why does Glenn have the indigo lapis, but is the red magi, while Ashley has the dark lapis, but is the purple magi? And why is our team called Magus, the singular of magi, but we're also known as the Magi Knights? She's not important. Hey, new party member.
イルルルのスカートの中身。やった見えた
Oh, I get it. His hair's his penis. I want to come inside Nagamimi. Princess Inaluna hosts a tournament to find a husband, but her dad thinks that objectifies men. So Inaluna's dad turns the tournament into a prom to objectify women so Ina Luna can find a husband. Reinhardt, the Felicia that killed Lily, shows up, but it turns out that Ina Luna is a magi and joins our party. The eye mushroom, known as the Witch's Eye, is literally the most important thing in this game. It's the focus of the school play, where Enogia and our school founder were saved by the angel Miria. Our school founder is... wait, Fatima? No, the world ends with you. Sarah thinks that the eye mushroom is the star eyes. And by using the star eyes, Sarah and her sister, Shion, can return to the past now. But that's a few games too early, so all it does is give Elulu schizophrenia and summon a sleep paralysis demon. Sarah is literally 13, so our school principal is legal because she's over 100 years. Detective Cone clone and Shotacon self-insert Yu has informed you that consuming shrooms and bullying Yu has started the judgment of time. You could just say we're being tried as adults for possession of drugs and molestation of a minor. The judgment of time is when Miria reverses time. Time reversal is not time travel. Basically, Valerie thinks that the Felicia are killing humans so they can take over the world. So to stop the Felicia, we invade their home dimension. Refi, the twin Lapis, can wield the Star Key, a weapon that is part key, part blade. That's fucking stupid! The Witch's Eye, formerly known as the Eye Mushroom, which Heine found through his hair penis sensor, is the key to unlocking Refi's true power. She's not important, but this scene kid is.
I am a broken mirror, pointing out your insecurity!
Dino has a synthetic lapis implanted into his chest. It is not an X-sphere. It's a reference to the older Luminous Arc games. Right, Mizutani? After disrespecting the Felicia's borders, the Felicia continue to disrespect our borders. We exile Bonaparte to St. Helena thanks to Admiral Cockburn. And, wait a minute, I recognize those boobs. Olmorde is actually Fran, the school nurse, and is a Felicia. The Felicia are not evil. They're trying to find the Star Eyes and the Star Key to take over the world and bring balance back towards the light. Valerie finds the Star Eyes and powers up the team. Glenn gets massive gains, but Elulu starts having seizures, and Refi suffers roid rage.
Bye, Felicia.
Black Felicia start attacking the school, so Valerie orders us to awaken Miria. But, joke's on us, Valerie is evil. In Arc 3's words, Valerie is a Nefaria, the enemy of Felicia, and tricked us into thinking that the Black Eyes were the Star Eyes so that she could induce the Judgment of Time with the Star Key to create a time reversal with Miria. The Black Eyes also mind control Glenn, and Enogia shows up and literally penetrates Miria, turning Miria into a Gyaru and forcing the Judgment of Time in favor of the Nefaria. In plain English, the bad guys were using us the entire time, and Elulu is fucking dead. Is it really that hard to say? We can save Elulu by rescuing her soul from the Sanzu River and having some fun with Miku. But inflation made admission fees into the afterlife skyrocket. Seventh Dragon tried to warn us, we just had to listen. Fran, Olmorde, the Big Booby school nurse can come too. Smirsoff, the ruler of the Felicia, says that Refi is a child of Issa. I mean the chosen one of Martel. I mean the actual Star Eyes, and that he will slowly lose his humanity on his mission to save the world. The reason why Lily was killed in the first place was because the Felicia were spawn camping humans before they turned into monsters. Not only will people like Lily be happy being slaughtered because it's humane, but they'll also be excited to be reborn. Remember kids, before it's too late, if you really love someone, just kill them. Okay, wait. So Lily gets to stay in this cycle of murder and rebirth, but Elulu is an exception because she's a main character? Shut the fuck up. Have some artwork, a voiced line, and a stat boost. While we were in the spirit world, the school disappeared for 3 months. Just call it summer vacation. Let's have a recap. Because Enogia rearranged Miria's guts, she's been corrupted by Tennis Lux. This pushes the world towards twilight, which favors the moon, which favors Nefaria. The black lapis that Valerie has is called the Tennis Lapis. The Felicia, the good guys, somehow, need the Star Eyes and Aura Lux to push this balance back towards the sun. Funnily enough, the game does not have a sun analog to Twilight. Regardless, to save the world, we need to find the Aura Lapis. Refi is the Twin Lapis, which means he is the actual Star Eyes. With the Star Eyes, the Star Key, and the Aura Lapis, we can reverse time and redo the Judgment of Time. And by allying with the Felicia, Refi becomes the Aura Lux Star Eyes. And the only person who knows how to make an Aura Lapis is Ina Luna's dad. Also, Refi isn't human, so when Refi channels his power as the Aura Lux Star Eyes, he's losing the humanity that he never had. Remember how the Felicia, the good guys, were harvesting eyes in the beginning of the game? Sometimes their victims don't die. So Valerie implants these artificial lapises into the Felicia's victims and turns them into mind-controlled super soldiers. The eye mushroom, also known as the Witch's Eye, misidentified as the Star Eyes, can be used to create the Aura Lapis. At this point, there are two story routes, but the final ending scene will change based on the waifu you pick. Either way, things are getting really intense, so let's watch Muse perform Snow Halation.
白く輝く聖なる夜の奇跡世界は変わるよもっと暖かくきらめく空に希望の鐘が響く愛が降り積もる今夜世界中に
Refi destroys the Tennis Lapis, but Valerie sacrifices herself to save Enogia. But that means Glenn has no one to simp over. On the bad route, Glenn dies of thirst that will never be quenched. On the good route, and because we're using our powers as the Aura Lux Star Eyes, Glenn realizes that hypnosis as a fetish is pretty bland if you don't mix it with other fetishes, and rejoins our team. But all the while, Refi, has slowly been losing his senses. With the Tennis Lapis now just chair-like padding, Enogia's plans have been foiled. But he'd rather kill Miria than give up his waifu. On the bad route, we convince Enogia that Netodare is good this time because we're the self-insert main character, emphasis on self-insert. But on the good route, we convince Enogia that Netodare is good this time because we're the self-insert main character, emphasis on self-insert. Besides, Enogia has a side girl that loves him so much, she came back to life. Also, we need to kill the true evil, monogamy. I mean a monotheistic deity. Fucking God. We need to kill God. So we kill the Nefaria manipulating Enogia. Yorg wanted to die so that she wouldn't be trapped in a forever war that God created. God grants two people the power of the Twin Lapis, in this case Enogia and Refi, and just wants to see what they'll do if given a binary choice. Because if God really cared about humanity, why did God give Ziz a heart defect which led to his death at the age of 22? Don't think about it, just trust God's plan. But if God really did have this plan, then why give humanity the illusion of a binary choice if he already knows the solution? God damn do I feel smart. Thank you, Nagamadi. You're my favorite Bible. Regardless of the good or bad route, Refi kills God but nearly loses his humanity in the process. But thanks to his waifu, Refi retains his humanity and lives happily ever after with his waifu. Like with Arc Rise Fantasia, we really need to talk about the story of Luminous Arc 3. Maiko Shimura and Atsushi Komine, the writers for Arc 1 and Arc 2, weren't credited for Arc 3. The writer for Arc 3, Miyuki Kishimoto, had very few credits to their name at the time. Arc 3's strength is its character writing. Every character has a routine, and every chapter begins with a lighthearted skit. Ilulu practices her flute in the morning. Glenn spends his free time sparring. As the party gets larger, they split into smaller groups, like how Sarah and Yu hang out in the library. When the plot picks up, Arc 3 always keeps these character traits in mind. Dino's powers amplify magic, which helps expose Bonaparte's traps and helps the team enter the world of Felicia. Ilulu has a chronic illness that acts up frequently. Every character in Arc 3 has a lot more depth. You can even learn secrets about your party members if you spend money in the library. And when Marvelous hosted an official character popularity poll, you know you're mostly playing Arc 3 to hang out with your virtual friends. The other Arc games have one-note characters by comparison. In Arc 1, Lucia had no time to develop her relationship with Alf, and their declaration of love felt out of place. This is mostly because Lucia fucks off for most of the game, and the intermissions you have are independent of the story. Arc 2 did a better job with Alti and Roland, but the story literally has a panic attack on Fatima's route. Arc Rise is really just a Japanese interpretation of Catholic relationships, where every couple has a brain-dead wife and abusive husband in holy matrimony forced upon them by Jesus McDonaldite Christ. And if we're talking about boy meets girl, it's weird how every Arc heroine is some kind of irrational that needs to be controlled by the reasonable self-insert main character. As a rejection of that trend, Ilulu is the only character who explicitly started at rank 3 and just reached rank 4 in the story. Everyone else in the party is introduced at rank 4 or above. Because it took Ilulu 2 years of study to reach rank 4, it sounds like she was held back a year. In fact, Ilulu's defining character trait is confusing sugar with salt. So no, Ilulu is just as dumb as the other Arc heroines. Ilulu's personality is nice and submissive, not plucky and feisty. One of the themes of Luminous Arc 3, Eyes, is about reading between the lines. But I think it's very hard for a player to understand that, partly because of a very confusing story, but mostly because Image Epic's marketing tactics encourage getting you to shout, "It's just like Etrian Odyssey," or "It's just like Tales of Symphonia." Luminous Arc 3 rips off Arc Rise Fantasia. God is just a selfish child. Underneath God are two lesser deities trapped in a meaningless war, and neither side is good. Real is like the Nefaria, while Imaginal is like the Felicia. Our original third solution is to simply kill the true God. Valerie manipulates us in the same way as Vice. The physical tank uses a sword in their main hand and a dagger in their offhand. Refi and Lark have big swords, an even bigger attitude, had someone close to them die, get betrayed by the person they look up to, have a fight with their best friend, and are really uncomfortable being the champion of a god they don't like. Luminous Arc 3 has no right to lecture us about reading between the lines, especially when Arc 3 is a high school alternate universe of Arc 2. And I'll save that comparison for another time, because I think every Arc game deserves another read-through before we talk about Stellar Glow, especially Arc 1 and 2. So when Mizutani denies that Arc Rise and the Luminous Arc games are set in the same universe, it feels like Mizutani covering his tracks. Arc 3's story is extremely confusing. When time reversal actually means the time of a paradigm reversal, it comes off as misleading nomenclature instead of a pun. But the mystery behind every single thing in Arc 3 is basically, did you think A was A? No, A is B. Did you think A was B? No, A is C. Did you think A was C? No, A is not C, but A is D and B. Every time something gets a different name or definition, it feels like the writer is trying to make the player feel stupid. So let's break down the story, starting with the size of the script. Mizutani bragged about how Arc 3 was twice as long as Arc 2. Judging by release dates, it took the same amount of time to develop Arc 3 as Arc 2. But remember, Arc 2 was written by the same two writers that worked together on Luminous Arc 1, So with twice the amount of text, but with only one writer, Kishimoto had to write 4 times the amount of text as expected from Komine and Shimura alone, and in a series in which they had no background in. So who is really to blame when plot beats are reused wholesale? Remember, Arc Rise Fantasia was delayed for 6 months for just the story. If Image Epic could do it for their newest baby, why didn't that happen for the end of a trilogy for a game series that started the company? Image Epic made a lot of compromises to make sure Arc 3 fit in a 128MB cartridge. The character sprites, acting, and cutscenes made Arc 3's storytelling more natural and is clearly copied from Sands of Destruction. As a result, Arc 3 has the fewest voice lines per cutscene, and when every chapter has about 10 to 15 minutes of cutscenes, a lot of cutscenes go unvoiced. Let's look at the plot twist on Chapter 14. The part when Valerie betrays the party is voiced, and so is the part when Enogia appears and self-inserts into Miriam.
ありがとうみんな。君たちは本当に優秀な生徒たちだった。
我が麗しのミリア、ようやく君に触れられる時が来た。
But Alulu's death scene is not voiced. In Sands of Destruction, cutscenes over 20 minutes long are fully voiced, because of the budget set aside for a 256MB cartridge. And Arc Rise Fantasia has thousands of voiced lines, not including skits. With less voice-acted lines, there is more pressure on the music to carry the game. There is religious commentary in Arc 3, but it's mostly glossed over. Samsara, the Buddhist cycle of death and rebirth, and the Sanzu River, which Buddhists believe lead to the afterlife, are explicitly mentioned, but that's it. There might be some commentary about how a Lulu gets to cheat Samsara because she's a main character, but that idea is dropped faster than critical Buddhism. Miria is an angel and there is a god, and God is the demiurge, but that's it. Arc 3's references to religion are name-dropped, but never elaborated further. It's kind of like Seventh Dragon, and how the writers used Takehaya to represent humanity's hubris by being named after a Japanese god. The commentary is there, but it's up to the player to interpret. Given Mizutani's previous games, I interpret just name-dropping religious terms as a sign of cowardice. The only exception is Arc 2. So when Arc 3 reverts to commenting on religion, it seems that Mizutani thinks that that's what makes a JRPG great. Arc 1 condemns Catholicism throughout the entire game, probably because Final Fantasy Tactics did it first. Sands of Destruction is Xenogears, except instead of Gnosticism, it's Yevon Hellferverg. And Arc Rise is about the Jews using the crucifix like a marionette controller to holocaust the Buddhist jihadis. So when the Sanzu River is the backdrop to an inflation joke, I can't help but think that Mizutani wanted Kishimoto to go out of their way to disparage Buddhism and Catholicism, but only had time for a cheap joke. Instead of commentary on Naraku, the Buddhist hell, we get Charon and Cerberus from Greek mythology. Christmas to Luminous Arc 3 is nothing more than a way to flaunt your voice actors, and package the game with a pre-order bonus just in time for holiday shopping. Simply put, I think Image Epic's commentary on religion is incompetent. There is nothing profound in their breakdown of religion. It's only there because, according to market research, that's what sells the game. It's almost like Image Epic's religion is worshipping the almighty dollar. Weird, because Arc Rise was JRPG Waga Toso. But aside from that, Arc 3 is what you're used to. Boy meets girl. Boy bickers with girl. Girl nearly dies. Then boy realizes he's in love with girl, turning boy into fuckboy. The fake antagonist isn't evil, they're just doing things differently. And then fuckboy, girl, and fake antagonist kill the real antagonist, which is God. I'm going to stop here, because this is dangerously close to spoiling Stellar Glow. Even with a completely fresh writer, it feels like Image Epic is creatively bankrupt. I don't mind when assets and plot beats are reused occasionally, but Arc 3 is an obvious sign that the Luminous Arc brand has gone stale. At this point, I think you've noticed something. I'm focusing more on the producer, Mizutani, instead of the director, Shirakawa. And that's because of how Mizutani credits himself in his previous games. In Arc Rise Fantasia, he is credited separate from the Image Epic credits, and Mizutani clumps himself with other big names like Takumi Miyajima. Mizutani is the very first credit in Arc 2 as the series producer, which is separate from the actual producer, Hikaru Nakano. Mizutani also takes charge with public announcements of the Arc games. During development of Arc Rise, Mikage even went on record saying that Mizutani can be overbearing. It seems that Mizutani is trying to recreate the perfect storm that was Luminous Arc 1, but with no understanding of the circumstances that made Luminous Arc 1 famous. Arc 1 beat Super Robot Wars, Final Fantasy Tactics, and Fire Emblem to market. The only game it didn't beat was Advance Wars. Hoshigami Remix, Arc 1's only competitor in America, received a mixed review in Nintendo Power 1 month before Arc 1's positive review. After 5 years of mediocre games with very few exceptions, Mizutani has completely ignored how much goodwill and the absence of a reputation affect a player's perception of a game. Because if you read between the lines, which is the lesson of Arc 3, then you can easily isolate the persistent problems in the presence of celebrity developers and heartwarming dev blogs. So when Mizutani writes in a dreamy prose, rhyming with an old TGS pamphlet, and doesn't even mention Shirakawa or Kishimoto despite name-dropping Kaito Shibano by their first name. I feel disgust when Mizutani ended his dev blog about Luminous Arc 3 with an announcement that he would be directing Fate Extra, and immediately assumed that Fate fans would support him. And I'm starting to understand why Kazuya Nino almost single-handedly restored trust in Image Epic. Because to me, Mizutani's strength as a producer is to secure cash flow by playing safe and repeating what worked. If you don't believe me, describe Stellar Glow without accidentally describing any Luminous Arc game or Arc Rise Fantasia, and without telling me that recycling ideas was the entire point of Stellar Glow. But that accusation goes both ways. This entire video was made this way to prove a point, down to word choice, sentence structure, and comedic beats. Because just like Image Epic, you have to trust me that things will be different when I have just given you more of the same. Because what if I told you that this range that you're hearing right now is my natural voice range, and that I'm actually straining myself to match your expectations? Luminous Arc 3 is the first Image Epic game with adjustable difficulty settings on the first playthrough. Even though Sands of Destruction has the hard mode, you have to beat the game on normal first, and the game doesn't even tell you you're playing on hard. And on top of that, hard mode is only available in the Japanese version. From Luminous Arc 3 onward, you're always given this choice. Keep in mind for the rest of this review, normal mode will form my opinions of gameplay and comparisons to other games. I'll still talk about hard mode, just not as much. On normal, most enemies and fights aren't very difficult, and you have to play recklessly to game over. Until Chapter 5. Chapter 5 is a sequential fight, a problem since Arc 1 and Arc 2 because Final Fantasy Tactics did it first. The first sequential fight was on Chapter 3, first against Ashley, and then against Felicia. Ashley is also your first boss. While Ashley is very strong, the rest of her team is very weak, so really, it's 3 against 1. In Chapter 5, you have to fight against Bonaparte and a bunch of Felicia. The map has a lot of choke points, so it's very easy to pick off enemies. But after a few turns, Bonaparte joins the fight. Bonaparte frequently double turns your party and spams his area of effect flash drive. And since Bonaparte's stats are so high, only flash drives can damage him. You might beat Bonaparte at Waterloo, but now you have to deal with Reinhardt and his Unternehmen Doppelkopf, but at least you get Ina Luna. Given her starting stats, you should be around level 7. Reinhardt is level 13, and can easily one-shot your party members without his flash drive. And because the battle map is small, it's hard to spread out your party. And because there are no choke points, you can't control the enemy like you did against Bonaparte. So basically, the enemy can deal more damage than a Lulu or even item spamming can heal. Ina Luna can only cast 3 offensive spells before running out of MP, and because Ina Luna is a pure spellcaster, she's basically useless by the time Reinhardt starts fighting. Looking back, I got really lucky. I used Heine as bait for Reinhardt so he could waste a few turns. I also cornered Reinhardt and had just enough time to beat him with flash drives. But look at my regular attack damage relative to Reinhardt's health. So based on the damage I'm dealing, you're basically forced to beat him with flash drives. Keep in mind, on Chapter 5, you are barely 4 hours into the game, and one of those hours is spent doing side missions. I felt like I was playing the game wrong. I had to resort to really cheap tactics, but I completed every side mission, so even though I beat Chapter 5, it felt like I didn't deserve it. I ran into a similar problem in Chapter 8, where you have to fight against Maria's shadow. Sarah joins the party in Chapter 7, but you lose Sarah upon starting Chapter 8. New side missions only appear after you start the chapter, so realistically, you don't have time to grind Sarah. But on Chapter 8, Sarah begins in a fixed position, trapped between the enemy and landlocked from a moat of water. The enemies also prioritize Sarah, and if Sarah dies on Chapter 8, it's game over. So if you're not prepared with defensive lapises to equip onto Sarah, you can easily get soft-locked on Chapter 8. It doesn't matter if Shion also joins the party and can one-shot some of the enemies. That doesn't deal with the problem of Miria. If you grind to match Miria's level, which no one is expected to do, that doesn't do much for Sarah because of her stat growth. This is the same exact problem with Sands of Destruction and Arc Rise Fantasia. Bosses just have inflated stats and bullshit gimmicks. But let's go back to the problem of grinding. Killing enemies gives you the most experience, but even if you're overleveled, you'll always earn 10 experience. If you use support skills on yourself, you can also earn 10 experience. Experience gain is also capped at 255, just in case you need to, accelerate things. Level grinding is mandatory on hard mode. Normal mode is already a 45-hour game with 25 hours of grinding disguised as side missions. Hard mode turns that 25-hour grind into 40 hours. There are no secret endings or smarter enemies in hard mode. It's just a waste of time. Even worse, the plot doesn't pick up until halfway through the game. And at that point, the plot is just telling you you're stupid because you're not as smart as the writer. The difficulty spike in Chapter 5 is so shocking you might have had enough with Luminous Arc 3 when you've spent no more than 4 hours in it. But at least with Inaluna, grinding gets easier, and that's not because she's horny for Refi. The most valued player, or MVP, is awarded to the character who performs the most actions in the fight. The lapises you earn at the end of a fight change based on the MVP. But you wouldn't know that without a guide. And this loops back to the problem of Arc 2 and Arc Rise. Even if you play through the game as expected, at a certain point you are forced to grind. So now that we know the problems of Arc 3, let's compare Arc 3 in context of its competition. We'll look at 2 DS games that were released within a year of Luminous Arc 3. Nights in the Nightmare is perfect for hipsters like me to condescend to everyone about my superior taste in Japanese-made games that I can only enjoy when translated into English. The first boss fight, Jamie, is on Chapter 4. By this point, you've learned that every enemy attacks with a strict timing, and you can predict this timing by looking at the left of the top screen. Every enemy also follows a strict movement pattern. Only this time, Jamie's movements are unpredictable, but that's why you get an archer that can lock Jamie in place. You've also learned from other enemies to interrupt Jamie before he uses his special attack. Only this time, interrupting Jamie makes him weak to your attacks. You might not even need to switch between Law and Chaos to keep your MP up. Every mechanic in Knights is simple in isolation. Dealing with them all at once is what makes Knights difficult. To recruit party members, you need their key item. To get those items, you need to go out of your way to break objects. If you need to go out of your way to get something, you need to reposition using a knight or a duelist. Trans Soul levels up your party so they can equip stronger weapons, and also restores their vitality to prevent permadeath. Storing charged attacks requires going to a specific point in the battle map, but you can overwhelm your enemy before they have a chance to react. But charging attacks leaves you wide open. Gambling equipment durability with weapon upgrades can give them game-breaking powers, as long as you can count hits. But if all of this is too complicated, you can completely ignore mechanics. Out of 100 recruitable party members, only your waifu and your wife affect the ending. If you have no units in your party, you can get stand-ins that come in at scaling levels. Trans Soul is so complex because someone thought that a web of relationships that requires pausing a frantic battle system to give the characters the depth of a one-liner and sonno joy would make excellent parameters to level up units. And if things are still too difficult, you can always play on easy. Next, let's talk about Shining Force Feather. Yoichi Shimosato, the producer of Sands of Destruction, is the producer of Feather. Chapter 3 pits you against Gaon and a bunch of monsters. By this point, you've learned all the ways you can use force points or FP. Attacking with max FP lets you attack up to 3 enemies with one character. You can also use FP to power up spells or use a max attack. You can also tag team an enemy with Connect, or with the entire party with Unison to play home run contest. Even though every character has a predetermined stat growth, you also get bonus stats that you can freely allocate. Shining Force Feather also makes every equipment decision a trade-off. You can wear light armor and wear an accessory, or equip bulky armor but no accessory, or equip 2 accessories but no armor. Even the weapon tree forces trade-offs. You can make a weapon stronger, but make it harder to time hits. You also won't suffer from damage reduction when attacking multiple enemies, but now you're limited to 2 targets. But on the other hand, you can make it easier to time hits but deal less damage, but you can more evenly spread damage when attacking multiple enemies. Even dressing up your waifu gives you different passives. So while Feather has a linear story, its strength is making every 9 of its playable characters unique. It gives you total control on how you build a party member and still maintains some role identity. All 3 games ask a simple question. What do you want from a video game? Is it story, gameplay, or is it brand loyalty? After beating Knights once, you unlock Melia mode. Recruitable characters might change, but the overall story doesn't change much. But that's the point. Melia mode, being very similar to Maria mode, reinforces the cyclical nature of Knights in the Nightmare. You also unlock Hard mode. Both a new story route and a new difficulty setting might be enough to justify playing New Game Plus. On the other hand, Shining Force Feather is much more streamlined. You can beat the main story and every side quest in about 15 hours. There is no New Game Plus, but there are plenty of post-game challenges if you want more. The music and voice acting can give Luminous Arc 3 a run for its money.
今まで気づかなくてすまない。相当手だれの伏兵だ。
伏兵？まさかとは思っていたが、本当に君だったとはね。
誰だ？
名乗る必要があるかい？ジン。
シズマ？てめえ、なんでこんなところに？
まだ気づいていないのかい？君を待っていたんだよ。
ああ？そういうことか。どういうことだよ。お前を釣るために嘘の情報がまかれてたってことだよ。
予想していたより早く来てくれて助かったよ。
Meanwhile, Luminous Arc 3 is focused on improving from its predecessors. Ilulu directly addresses gameplay problems from the older Luminous Arc heroines. Ilulu is a healer with some damage spells, but is weaker than dedicated nukers like Olmorde or Yu. Yes, there is a story reason why ulti is powerful, but when other dedicated nukers are weaker than ulti, that is a balancing problem. Ilulu is also a much stronger healer on her own. Luna has trade-offs compared to Pip. Luna is a better healer and has offensive magic, but has worse MP problems and is slower. You might be using 2 of 6 deployable character slots to do one job. Making Ilulu a better unit solves one problem, but now you're fighting against the Luminous Arc tradition of taking away characters. You lose Glenn and Ilulu at roughly the same time. Your replacements are Lyra, a melee attacker, and Olmorde, a nuker. Lyra can learn a revival spell, but you need to level grind to unlock it, and Olmorde's only healing spell targets herself. So for 3 story fights, you are without a replacement healer. It's at this point that either Xion or Sarah become the main healer. Because Xion and Sarah are available early game, there is a much higher risk that you bench them. But now at mid-game, because they're more useful, you might be struggling because you never kept them leveled up. But the final exam for this stretch of story is Smearsoft, who is a healing check. When Lucia leaves the party for a second time in Arc 1, you're down a magic nuker and healer. Lucia's replacement is Palone, a melee fighter with such low accuracy, he's basically a joke character. But Leon, a melee fighter, leaves in the same chapter, but as a replacement, you get Kai. Kai has more range and is a little weaker, but is an excellent replacement until you get Leon back. Arc 2 meanwhile gives you Sadie, a spellcaster like Ulti, but also gives you easier missions where you deploy fewer characters. When Kyria commits suicide by Judy Hopps in Sands of Destruction, Elephas Rex is one of the easiest bosses in the game, and the dungeon afterwards doesn't even have a boss. When Rifia falls into a coma in Arc Rise Fantasia, the next dungeon has an elevator that skips the entire dungeon, and the only challenge afterwards is talking to NPCs. For a game that regularly took away your party members, Arc Rise had enough self-restraint to give you a break. So why did Arc 3 refuse to learn anything from its previous games? Arc 3's improvements are in everything except the battles, and this is where Arc 3 falls apart. Action order is still imbalanced and is a problem since Arc 1. The delay of moving one space and waiting is significantly faster than just waiting. You can exploit this with lapises that regenerate HP or MP every turn. Bosses feel like they're cheating the system. So when Arc 3 only begins to experiment with action order in the middle of combat, it seems like the tactical elements of Luminous Arc were never well thought out to begin with. The level up system didn't really do much for me. Some characters, like Ashley, have so few differences between choices, there's no point in having them. Every character gets a specific playstyle because they only get 5 skills. So with characters like Yu, there's no point in going balanced because Yu's only role is to be a nuker. Xion is a glass cannon and her spells are very expensive. But when you compare 100% investment towards balanced or unique, it makes more sense to build Xion as balanced, because her magic stat doesn't really suffer. On Chapter 17, Refi's in-story power-up increases his stat gains from his current level onwards. So if a level 37 Refi gets powered up, then Refi only gains 3 levels of better stat gains by the time he reaches level 40. But if a level 2 Refi gets powered up, then Refi's stats at level 40 are noticeably higher. Now that I think about it, Arc 3 is the only Luminous Arc game where the main character doesn't have a one-on-one fight. So it looks like they skipped a very important series tradition to cater to min-maxers. Refi's transformation also fights against Ilulu as a playable character. Because Refi's new stat growth focuses on strength, and because his new buff takes away defense in favor of more strength, fights turn into a race to see who can one-shot whom again. So will anyone even notice that Ilulu is trying to improve a broken battle system when the best healing spell is a great sword to the face? Unison attacks are a correction from synergies from Arc 1. Refi has to be adjacent to his partner and his enemy for a unison attack. And depending on your partner, the magic or strength stat is used in the damage calculation. Ashley is the best character to perform unison attacks, followed by Anogia, then Dino, then a tie between Xion and Almorde, instead of Ilulu. Compared to Engage from Arc 2, unison attacks end up being more of the same. It's a neat gimmick that deals a lot of damage, but is a flimsy excuse to make the final boss overpowered. The final boss has 3 phases. The first phase is a joke. The second phase is only difficult if you split up your team, as the enemies have extremely high action order. Phase 3 immediately happens after Phase 2. Between consecutive fights, you normally get a break. Your party fully recovers, and you have a chance to rearrange your team. This happened between Phase 1 and Phase 2. But in Phase 3, everything carries over. That means if a party member died during Phase 2, they're still dead in Phase 3. this is the only time in the game this happens. This loops back to my problem with Arc Rise Fantasia. A bullshit surprise like this only encourages a player to just stop and watch a Let's Play, especially if the most effective way to prevent frustration is through hours of grinding. And it's very apparent when it comes to the new mechanics. Weapon upgrades basically force you to grind. Whenever you complete a repeated side mission, you get a list of enemies instead of the mission description. Some weapons have different elemental attributes. Changing weapon elements only affects their basic attacks. And in some cases, the gimmick weapon is the one with a different elemental attribute. In Arc 1, the first choice immediately upon starting the game influences your crafting items. Arc 1 also encouraged you to experiment, and even talking to NPCs to get the right combinations for powerful weapons. Sands of Destruction is a more straightforward but more rewarding version of Arc 1's crafting system, to the point you can easily break the game if you know what you're doing. It feels like Arc 3 was taking notes from 7th Dragon, but failed to realize that in practice, ready-made equipment was superior to crafted equipment because of its convenience. These new and reintroduced mechanics just felt like Image Epic checking off a box to ensure market penetration. Intermissions are the same way. Getting the best result for every intermission is the easiest in Arc 3 because you can save scum before initiating an intermission. There is also an in-game method to repair a relationship, but why spend money if you can just reset and try again? Bath intermissions are a waste of time, and they don't even count towards 100% completion. Although NPC intermissions are well endowed, they throw surprise fights on you. Since Luminous Arc 1, an intermission is a break from fighting, so getting even into a single fight makes you paranoid that every intermission, including party member intermissions, will have a surprise fight. NPC intermissions count towards 100% completion, but that's it. If you need to grind, take a side mission. If you want boobs, talk to Shion or Almorde. NPC intermissions also have this weird theme about furries being prosecuted, but Arc 3 is even more careless in its commentary than Sands of Destruction. The furries are actively put in their place as valuable but disrespected members of the service industry. And of course, the women are swooning over the horse. Multiplayer is no different than the older Luminous Arc games. It's just a player versus player mode. But considering how small your party roster is, you'll be fighting against mirror matches. It's only there to grind more lapises. Sub-events are still difficult to find and complete, and my opinion of them since Arc 1 has not changed. So it's totally fine that one of the most important cutscenes is in a permanently missable sub-event with the completion window of one mission. If you have a problem with that, buy a strategy guide. Copen and his wacky adventures return, only this time you have to play roulette to view them. They turned the comic relief skit that shows up at the end of every mission into a reaction-based minigame that is required for 100% completion? Why? Since Luminous Arc 1, you were encouraged to go into a New Game Plus. Arc 3 carries over your equipment and levels. Glenn is also the only character who resets to level 1. But if you don't want to deal with New Game Plus at all, you can just make a save on Chapter 19 and then play through either route. If you complete certain requirements in some missions, you can spawn enemies that drop powerful lapises. You can't spawn these enemies in a regular new game, but these enemies are so powerful you'd never beat them. There's also a hot spring side quest where you can fight witches from Arc 2. Again, you can challenge the hot springs in a regular new game, but you have to grind. If these extras are familiar to you, that's because Arc 2 and 3 have identical extras. But remember the point I was trying to make. A choice between Luminous Arc 3, Nights in the Nightmare, and Shining Force Feather is a value proposition. When so many things in Arc 3 extend playtime for no reason, it's easy to dismiss it as a waste of time. Let's remove our attachment to Image Epic for a moment and focus on sales. These are the lowest sales numbers that Image Epic has ever seen. And that's the thing. Nights in the Nightmare only sold 23,000, and Nights in the Nightmare is the only game out of the 3 to receive a port for modern systems. Do I have to say any more? As I mentioned earlier, the fan translation is machine translated, and as a result, Arc 3's script is literally translated from Japanese to English. So let's look at this process in reverse. In 2020, Kentucky Route Zero was localized in Japanese, but it was nominated as Kusoge of the Year, specifically because the translation failed to capture the atmosphere of KRZ. You can argue that a transliteration is exactly what KRZ needed to simply navigate the story, but overwhelmingly, the Japanese have disagreed on that philosophy. How distracting this is, and if a game becomes unplayable, is a risk you have to assess yourself. So let's redefine our evaluation of localizations through risk. I think Sands of Destruction's localization is low risk. Webtoon employed very talented voice actors, and the script reads naturally despite changes in characterization. I thought the localization was great, and did not investigate further because nothing raised my suspicions. On the other hand, I think Arc-Rise Fantasia is high risk. The negative press encouraged me to find answers on why the localization turned out that way. Ignition tried their best, but in the end, it wasn't enough. That being said, I think Luminous Arc 3's fan translation is high risk. The way Arc 3 read in English only encouraged me to play the game in Japanese. SessureCat endorses the use of machine translation, and their GBA temp signature links to a guide for machine translation. But there is this passion behind the project that goes beyond the stigma of machine translation. Even VRPG called out the machine translation for what it was, but played the game to completion and even had a waifu war. Plasturion's tools from the patch readme led to a 404. I reached out to Cat and they told me that Plasturion deleted it because they didn't like the story. I can't say I blame them, but that shouldn't limit someone's ability to make their own patch, but lacks the knowledge to make their own tools. You know, like SessureCat? Compare this to Poketax's 7th Dragon fan translation. All the tools you need to make your own translation are on a single page on romhacking.net. There was also a plan to update Arc 3's fan translation, but as of this video, development has stalled. The same thing goes for Plasturion and a new version of their tools. This is why I think Arc 3's fan translation is at high risk. When I poke at it, I get more questions than I receive answers. And at that point, I might as well just play the game in Japanese. Because if these methods were unorthodox, then why does Cat's translation appear on a Luminous Arc 1 hack to add subtitles to the opening? I'll end this section with 4 questions I don't know the answer to. 1. Where does Luminous Arc's fan translation belong in this new world of AI-generated media? 2. When there is a noticeably low quality in localizations with a budget, what expectations do we have for fan translations? 3. If you got the perfect translation for any Image Epic game, how does that affect the gameplay? 4. What lets a localization, fan-made or official, old or new, controversial or beloved, stand among the legends? Vagrant Story, Undertale, Lunar, Duang, Mother 3. If you've gotten this far, I think you already know that I recommend Luminous Arc 3, in spite of everything. And I think it's time to retire my rating system and override every negative decision I've made. Every Image Epic game I've reviewed is worth playing. Without all of this information, the end of Image Epic will not make sense. In a rush to make this new trilogy of Arc-Rise Fantasia, Image Epic completely neglected Luminous Arc 3. Even for a safety game designed for the Image Epic loyal, assets and story beats are so obviously reused, it feels like Image Epic is taking advantage of your trust. And as a result of a poor vision, and even poorer management, 2 games are mediocre. And this is a pattern that can no longer be ignored. Arc Rise Fantasia is the financial wound that never healed. And Luminous Arc 3 is the psychological wound that never healed. And let's be very real. Why would you ever trust someone that failed 7 times, but got it right the 8th, versus someone who got it right the first time and continues to get it right? It's ironic. A Japanese proverb suddenly doesn't make sense when it's not the right person making the right games at the right time with the right company. Luminous Arc 3 is the video game equivalent of being in high school. There is this aimless entitlement towards the world because you did your best. And Image Epic did their best. They partnered with a big company and forced their way to stand as equals with some of the best in the gaming industry. They did their press releases, spoke at conventions, proved to the world that they're the face of a new generation. And it wasn't enough. I want you to play Stellar Glow immediately after playing the Luminous Arc Trilogy and Arc Rise Fantasia, because I want you to notice what doesn't change. Stellar Glow is not a love letter to Image Epic's brilliant beginnings. It's a suicide note. Hey everyone, thanks for watching the video. It really means a lot to us. We want to give a huge shout out to all our Patreon donors because we want you to be happy for the miserable end of Image Epic that has lasted since its founding in 2005. If that hurts, then Image Epic's decisions that led to their bankruptcy will hurt more. It's not just Mikage or Mizutani. It's blind obedience to the almighty dollar, and lashing out when you don't get the invisible hand job that you think you are entitled to. Next episode, there are 3 kinds of Image Epic games. One made by Kazuya Nino, one made by Kazuya Nino, and one made by Kazuya Nino. But what if it's more of the same?